There's this guy on Twitter named Michael Ripp, Michael.
Yeah.
Rippe.
Oh, the Ripper?
Hey, is that what they call him?
Yes.
Riper?
That's what I believe.
He's some chief
Ripper.
something officer for some Bitcoin poker thing, but super analytics guy.
Okay.
He put out some good stats that we need to chit chat about.
Okay, morning. It is week 18, the aftermath of a final regular season week that saw lots of different things happen. And also, I mean, we got a lot to talk about today on the morning after week 18. So, we are going to get joined by my guy, Terrell Bush. We're going to talk all things regular season football, and it is going to be a great show this morning. It is the morning after TMA football. This is the final one of the regular season, as we now know who is in the playoffs, who the matchups are. It is Monday, January the 6th, and I couldn't be more excited to do this one last time for the regular season of 2024. And I have some things I want to talk about before we jump right into it. My guy T. Bush is here. He's going to join the program in just a few minutes. And before I do want to talk a little bit about exactly my thoughts on the regular season. And specifically, I want to start with my team, the Miami Dolphins. And that's just because I don't want to waste too much time. But look, as a longtime Miami Dolphins fan for 30 plus years, I've been through all the thick, the thin. You saw I had Dolphins jerseys in my background, Zach Thomas, Jason Taylor, early in the season, and I still have them. They're just not in the shot anymore. And ultimately, I came to the conclusion I can no longer support an organization that is broken after what I witnessed this entire season, from not just on the field, but off the field. You know, Tyreek Hill requesting a trade, basically wants out of Miami after the final game. Tua Tagovailoa gets paid. He's the franchise guy. He's not able to play in meaningful games. And the Dolphins, of course, lose another cold weather game, another game where they potentially had a chance to do something important. And they lost flat out. Didn't matter, obviously. But based on the way that Stephen Ross has run the organization, with the continued just not really caring about winning per se, saying you care about winning, but then not actually doing the steps necessary, retaining not just Mike McDaniel, the coach, which I think you could debate, but Chris Grier, the GM, who has been the GM now for 9 years, 0 playoff wins. Dolphins have the longest current drought of winning a playoff game, I think, in professional sports, not just the NFL. It's 24 seasons, and just nothing really has given me any inspiration or hope to keep watching. It's been quite disappointing to watch the Dolphins play, but more exciting to be able to watch the entire NFL, which I did on a whole nother level, specifically this season, the 2024 season, as we did TMA football. It's been such a pleasure to watch the league from a different perspective. And I am taking my talents to LA. And I've always been a huge Jim Harbaugh fan. So let's bolt up, boys. Just love the idea of supporting Justin Herbert. I thought maybe one day he could have been the Dolphins quarterback, but he is the Chargers quarterback. And anyways, Miami is in a whole world of hurt. Mediocrity lives and just thrives down in Miami. And I can no longer support the team under this current ownership group, which doesn't seem to change anytime soon. So for the first time in my life, I feel like I feel free and feel like I don't really care to follow and pay too much attention to Miami specifically. Give me more time to pay attention to the whole NFL. We saw so many things in the NFL the entire season, but specifically in week 18, and we're all set. So this is the morning after week 18. Make sure you're subscribing, following. Appreciate all the support all season. It's been such a fun time. We're off the last few weeks. I was traveling outside the country, taking that holiday season. I hope everyone had a happy holidays and a happy new year to you all. Let's make 2025 the best year yet. Let's dive into football in 2025 together. And we're going to do that starting right now with the guy that's joined me all season, one of the best in the business, gets so many great feedback comments about what my guy T. Bush is sharing when he comes on the morning after football. So let's bring him in, my man. What's up? How we doing today?
Rip, what's going on, my guy? Happy 2025, man. Happy New Year. Back on the show, man. It feels good to be back, bro. How you doing?
Listen, it feels good to be back. It's always great to be back with you. I've always loved talking football, sports with you. One of the best there is. And look, we've got a lot to dive in on today's regular season kind of recap, as well as a little touching on week 18. A lot of news across the league, obviously. Some coaches out, some coaches retained, organizations. We're going to get into the playoff preview specifically, but let's just start at week 18 and what we saw on the field this weekend. Specifically, let's tap into the final game of the regular season, which was the most important probably game of the entire NFL season, with what was on the line in the NFC North between the Detroit Lions, Minnesota Vikings, Sunday Night Football. All the makings of a great game. Good first half as far as competitive, kind of blowout in the second half where Detroit really established themselves. Minnesota left way too many points on the field, couldn't get it done. You know, Sam Darnold saw ghosts in 2019. I said he saw lions in 2025 because he had no time. I mean, it was an unbelievable performance from that Lions defense, surprisingly so. What was your takeaway on the game, seeing Detroit beating Minnesota? Detroit gets that bye, the number 1 seed. I think that's huge for the playoff push that they're going to put forward. And then conversely, Minnesota drops to the 5 seed. They'll now travel to LA next week to take on the Rams. But what's your take on the game itself and some of your overall thoughts?
Me heading right into the game, right? This was for the NFC North crown. This is for the number 1 seed in the NFC. So the magnitude of the game was at an all-time high. And the Lions came and they showed up and they showed out, man. I mean, taking your last point, I want to speak on the defense primarily because, man, of those red zone trips that the Vikings could not capitalize on was crucial for the totality of the game. I mean, 3 points on 12 goal to play plays. And that's crucial when you can't score on the goal line for a team that was really efficient throughout the year in the red zone. And they weren't able to capitalize on those plays. And you think about it, right? With all of the injuries to Detroit is the reason why a lot of people have backed off a little bit on Detroit. You know, throughout the season, we've seen a lot of their star players go down. But for them to be able to just have that next man up mentality and be able to show up the way that they had and the way that they did last night, especially in the back end, holding Justin Jefferson, holding Jordan Addison in that prolific offense that we've seen throughout the year. And I mean, the last couple of weeks with Sam Darnold even going off and having an MVP caliber season, the way that they played last night is the reason why a lot of people still think that they could potentially make it out of the NFC and go after a Super Bowl crown. So all kudos to the Detroit Lions, Dan Campbell, and the way that they showed up last night, because even when the offense couldn't get it rolling, the defense was the one that was able to step up. Now, you're taking it last week, right, against San Fran. The defense was getting beat up left and right, giving up big plays left and right. When you have that type of team that's able to rally and that's able to then make plays in the back end the way that they have last night, man, it just goes to show you why the Detroit Lions are favored the way that they are to come out of the NFC.
Yeah, well, it's amazing the difference 2 weeks can make, and you make the great point. We saw on week 18, Sunday Night Football, the Detroit Lions look like maybe the best defense I ever watched play a game. The way they were attacking, the way that the opposing quarterback Darnold had literally no opportunity to do anything. It felt like when the Vikings got in the red zone, they're 2-3 yards from the end zone. It felt like they were 100 yards from the end zone. There was no shot they were getting. It was wild to watch, and they just had so many chances and they couldn't get in. And you flash back to week 17, as you mentioned, Detroit against San Francisco. And it's just high scoring. I mean, teams going back and forth. Like the Detroit defense couldn't stop anyone. And then you go, wow, in 1 week, this Detroit defense, which has been over the last 8 weeks of the season just decimated by injury after injury after injury, and all the talk about it can't live up to that Super Bowl expectations, and yet there they are. And then now you go, wait, if this defense can play like this is going to be a whole world of hurt for the rest of the teams in the playoffs. We will talk the playoffs, but I still want to stay on the regular season. You make great points. So
I mean, even going on until just to close out, if we're going to move off the game here, but I mean, the first time in league history that the Detroit Lions captured the number 1 seed in the NFC. I mean, that has to speak for something. And like you said, the way Dan Campbell has been able to rally and overcome the injuries, I think we need to really speak on how prolific that defense was last night. I mean, 4 drives in the red zone for the Minnesota Vikings, 0 touchdowns, 14 plays for 10 yards, and 2 for 11 completion attempts for Sam Darnold in the red zone. It's like he couldn't get anything rolling. And when the offense couldn't get it going, when Jared Goff was turning over the football and making some of those plays that, we've seen from him in the past, the defense said, you know what, boys, let's go ahead, let's rally, and let's make sure these guys don't touch the end zone. And they did exactly that. It was the 5th straight win against the Minnesota Vikings, 8th straight versus NFC North opponents. And they haven't had a bye since week 5. It was big time for them to get this bye week, to get the number 1 seed so they can have a bye, so they can rest up and rally in the divisional round. So, all kudos to the Detroit Lions. Just wanted to, piggyback off of some of your latest points, man. And home field advantage throughout the postseason is big for Detroit because it's tough to play in Motor City, man. And last night it shows just how prolific in that environment.
Yeah, and I wrote some stuff down I want to talk about because you talk about how important that home field advantage is, but the bye week that Detroit now gets and the path. I mean, I love the path for Detroit right now. I mean, ultimately, we'll talk in a little bit. I love where Detroit's at. I love where your boys, the Eagles, are at, and so we have some exciting stuff. Let's just talk about quickly the coaches before we get into some of the regular season award stuff.
Let's do it.
Coaches out. We saw Gerard Mayo fired immediately after the New England Patriots win, when they actually wanted to lose. So they actually dropped from the number 1 overall pick to the number 4 overall pick in the 2025 NFL draft. And then conversely, the team with the number 5 pick, Jacksonville, fires Doug Peterson, which I think we saw as a foregone conclusion a lot, weeks and weeks ago. Those are the 2 coaches that have been fired in the last 24 hours. We'll see if any more drop. I know Cincinnati has removed the defensive coordinator. That seemed obvious. A lot of coaches coming back that were on the hot seat potentially. Giants said they're bringing back the Dayball and Joe Shane. Dolphins bringing back McDaniel and Greer. Indianapolis is bringing back Shane Steichen, Chris Ballard. So there's been continuously for a number of these organizations, which were questionable. We'll have to see how it continues. But I think less coaches out than I maybe expected so far. What's your take on those opportunities, starting with New England and Jacksonville? Do you like one more than the other? Because when you think about it, usually these head coaching opportunities open up, and oftentimes it's organizations that need a quarterback per se. In this circumstance with New England and Jacksonville, I mean, technically they both have their franchise guys in Drake May in New England and then Trevor Lawrence in Jacksonville. Do you like either opportunity more than the other when you just look at it early on, right from the top?
I mean, when you look at New England, right, and where they are draft positioning wise, I think you got to seek after that job, especially because now they have the quarterback behind center, right? When you look at these teams, right, and you look at it in a wide spectrum and you say, hey, I want to go to this team. Well, when you look at that, what is the future of the team? Where are they positioned now, and where can you see them being in the foreseeable future? Because when you take a job in this league in today's game, you don't have much time to turn things around before you're getting up out of there, man. So it has to be a situation that you're stepping into that okay, the only way you have a shot in the National Football League is if you have the guy behind center. Can I take on a job that has the guy behind center? I think New England, Drake May, has shown this year that he has some promise. He has some things that you could work with. Of course, there's things that he needs to improve on, his downfield accuracy, and his intermediate throws as well. But Drake May has shown throughout the year that he can be a guy that you can rally behind if you have the pieces around him. I think with the pick that they have, I think you said they have the 4th pick now.
Patriots are at 4.
Patriots are at 4, so they can look in getting one of the top guys. Maybe, I don't know if Travis will fall that far, but they could potentially get a big-time player at that 4th spot and then surround Drake May with some pieces that they can go ahead and rally with. But, I mean, when you look at Jacksonville and you see Trevor Lawrence, you see Mac Jones, you see the situation that they have, I mean, they have good pieces around Trevor Lawrence, and Trevor Lawrence hasn't shown up and hasn't played to the extent that we thought he was going to play when he was drafted number 1 overall a few years back. I mean, Trevor Lawrence has had an up and down slope. I don't know necessarily if that's the situation that I would want to step into. You know, in New England, what you're getting guys on defense that could play ball, that rally to the football. You're getting a stout defense, and you're getting a quarterback behind center. So I think when you look in New England, they're just positioned a little bit better than I feel like Jacksonville is at this point in time. But both head coaches, I didn't see Gerard Mayo getting a 1-year term. How did you feel about that one?
Yeah, I thought that Gerard Mayo was going to get kept only because of his history with New England and the way that he was named coach in waiting. So obviously there was a lot more thought in this, not just in one season where he was hired and it just didn't go right one season. I mean, he was the coach in waiting. Obviously, Robert Kraft, a huge connection with him a lot. I'll tell you the truth. I think it's a foregone conclusion that Mike Vrabel will be named New England's next head coach. And I think because Vrabel was out there, that was what really made Gerard Mayo expendable after the 1 year. I thought Kraft decided, like, it was very obvious to him he wanted Vrabel, a long-time legend in New England, and has already shown that he was a great coach in Tennessee in the past. So I think Vrabel being out there made it easier to get rid of Mayo. I think if Vrabel wasn't out there, I don't think Mayo would have been let go. At least not immediately. It feels like that is already in motion. I know there's rules about interviewing different players. It's interesting to think about New England and Jacksonville. We're going to have all offseason to talk about, the draft and the teams and who signs where. Right. But you make some really good points about, in New England, you've got the defense. You've got some really good players there. Defensively, Christian Gonzalez. You have Drake May, who I think if you're comparing quarterbacks that you'd want for the future, Drake May or Trevor Lawrence, I think you have to say Drake May at this point. And then you go to Jacksonville, though, and you go, Trevor Lawrence hasn't shown up to be the guy that he was picked number 1 early in his career. But then you look, Brian Thomas Jr. So they have some interesting things. It'll be interesting to see what happens. Maybe they go get Ben Johnson, someone offensively. I don't know. Maybe they go get Pete Carroll. I mean, they had the Tom Coughlin era in Jacksonville. So who knows? We'll talk all about that. It's just something to think about, interestingly enough, for those two AFC franchises. And also, you think about positioning. Would you rather be Jacksonville in their division, where it could kind of be more open when you think about who they're with in their in their division with Tennessee, sure, who's the number 1 pick, and then you say New England, who now is basically in a division with Miami and New York, but more importantly Buffalo, who's been dominating, and Josh Allen doesn't look like he's going to slow down for the next decade. They're like the new Patriots in the division. So, anyways, fun to talk about, think about, but let's continue now with anything more from Week 18 specifically. I know a lot of incentives were met. The Mike Evans moment was awesome. Really cool to see how much the team loves him, and I mean, one of the most unheralded receivers in the history of the NFL. I mean, the guy has just come in and since he came into the NFL, he has just been awesome. I mean, 11 straight 1,000-yard seasons, ties Jerry Rice's record, and just consistently a touchdown catcher and big playmaker. And awesome to think about Mike Evans being in Tampa Bay for all these years and the different quarterbacks he's played with, right? I mean, and he's had success no matter who it was.
No matter who it was. No matter who. And like Mike Evans, you could just see after the catch and after he got the yak and when he got up, you could just see the team was so happy for him. That just goes and speaks to the person that Mike Evans is. Outside of the football player that he is, when you have guys that are coming off of the sideline, that are happy, that are jumping around, showing that camaraderie with his teammates, man, it just goes to show you that Mike Evans, not only on the field as a dog, but off the field is a great person for his team to rally and be so happy for him to reach that milestone in his career. So shout out to Mike Evans, man. He's an unsung hero. And he's somebody that in this league, man, is a model of consistency year after year after year. 11 straight seasons, 1,000 yards, passing Randy Moss, I believe, for 10 straight seasons. And like you said, tying Jerry Rice. So big time player. And for him to deal with the quarterbacks that he's had in his career, and I mean to follow up, man, it just goes to show you Mike Evans is a dog, and shout out to him for sure.
For sure, that was the best part, is what the team was doing, and then the entire stadium chanting Mike, Mike, Mike. Now, my question to this is, like, did no one on the Saints have any idea that after the Bucs had basically won the game, but they were not taking a knee, what the next play was going to be? And were the Saints in on it? Because if I'm the Saints, I'm putting all the guys on Mike Evans on that play. If we're talking about real serious football, like, look, Really, like, you know where the ball's going here.
You know exactly where it's going. They're not dealing this ball right now, man.
No, like they're running a play for specifically this exact reason. But I get it.
Exactly.
It's cool to see, and just an awesome player, and awesome that as fans you can watch a guy like that who has just consistently succeeded. So. Geno Smith hits incentives. One thing I got to ask you, I'm curious on your thoughts on that's been different, I think, specifically this year, more so than I can remember in watching NFL, is the amount of coverage on what players have incentives and what they need to do at the end of the season. Like week 8 this year felt like everyone was reporting on this guy needs this guy needs this. And it was like an actual talking point that people were all focused on. I don't ever remember that. Do you think that's good for the NFL? Do you think that's just the evolution of social media and sport? Where do you kind of lay on this? Because I think that's an interesting talking point. And I'm just curious because at some level you have fans who spend, all their hardworking money to get to these games or to support the teams. And then you see the amount of money that's just being doled out at week 18 on incentives, which is great. I mean, this is their profession and it's cool, but the amount of just notoriety that these incentives are now getting and being paid attention to, where do you kind of stand on it? Any thoughts on sort of what the evolution looks like in the money aspect?
This is a great topic too, Rip. And I know we didn't put this on our preview, but it's great to discuss because I saw this yesterday as well. ESPN had played a segment on some of the guys that needed certain yardage or certain sacks or certain tackles to reach these incentives. I believe Von Miller needed another sack to reach his milestone. I think Courtland Sutton needed a few yards and another touchdown to reach his. Like you said, Mike Evans with his. And I mean, Cooper Rush, he played 52% of his starter snaps this year, and he needed 55 to reach his $500,000 incentive. And the Dallas Cowboys elected to start Trey Lance. So you see how this business can get. It's a gritty game. It's a gritty business, and just like any other. But to go into the point of the aspect of them highlighting this, I think it's big time, man. I think it's great to see from a viewership standpoint and from a fan standpoint that these guys, they're, even though we look at these professional athletes, we see the contracts, we see the amount of money that they're making on a yearly basis. Hey, these $500,000 isn't something to sneeze at. $1 million, $1.5 million isn't something to sneeze at. And these guys are going after it. They have families to feed. They have families to support. And so this money for them is big time, man. And they're going after it. Courtland Sutton, I know that Bo Nix said he's targeting him early to get this because we're going to get this out the way. So he made sure to get him the football. Baker Mayfield with Mike Evans, Von Miller going after his sack total. It's just good to see. And I feel like from a fan like myself, we didn't see this in the past. This wasn't something that was highlighted before, teams and players going after these incentives, but we've heard it from podcasts and from players speaking out on it that, some teams know this. Front offices understand this. General managers know this as well. So there have been some stories, of some situations where players may have been 5 catches away from getting, $500,000 or $1 million bonus, and teams electing not to play them or not to go after those incentives. So I think it's good that they're highlighting it now, because I feel like maybe it even puts a little bit more pressure on some of these front offices. Like, hey, this is known to fans now. These are more known than it was before. It's not being kept under wraps like it was before. So I think overall, man, it was good to see. It was great that ESPN highlighted the segments, and it just sucks to see that teams will go out of their way, like a Cooper Rush situation for the Dallas Cowboys, to not make sure that their players grab these incentives.
Yeah, so let's just I have 2 questions for you, and then I have some news I want to talk about, and then we'll get to the sheet. We're going off the sheet, which is fine because that's what
let's do it. Yeah.
TMA football. Okay, Cooper Rush. Yeah, so he misses out on $250,000. And my question is, do you think he ends up getting that from Jerry Jones still? Based on because my thought was, do you think the amount of bad PR and public backlash that Jerry's going to receive, whether he cares or not, will make him still give it to him? Because it did seem a little bit squirmy that for $250,000, the Cowboys, the valuable franchise in sport, Jerry Jones would not want to play Cooper Rush. Or at least pay him. I understand maybe they want to get Trey Lance a start to maybe just see if they could trade him or whatever, but it does seem pretty petty on the Cooper Rush thing, especially a guy that's been in Dallas as the backup for a while now. Right. You would think they'd want to do right by a guy, and it's not like an incentive for $2.5 million, it's $250,000 here that he deserves. You'd think, right?
Now, when you say do right by the guy, Jerry Jones, I feel like has always done right by his guys, right? He paid Dak Prescott. He's the highest paid quarterback in NFL history. I mean, CeeDee Lamb, he paid him before the season. So Cooper Rush has been there for a few years. I think they've gained a good relationship enough for Jerry Jones to say, you know what? But at the same time, he knew the number. He knew the percentage. They knew exactly what they were doing by sitting Cooper Rush. And like I said, this is a gritty game and it's a tough business. So at the end of the day, I'm not 100% sure that Jerry may front them. He may give him a little something, but it may not be $500,000, man.
So Cooper Rush has been a backup quarterback for the Cowboys now 7 years. So my point is, he's been there in Dallas his whole career, and he I mean, look, he's pretty solid in this season especially. I mean, look, 4-4 as the quarterback. He had 12 touchdowns, 5 interceptions. I mean, he was definitely a serviceable backup, if nothing else.
And he has been for a few years
now. My thought is just like, I think the backlash could be so intense. Like, what are you doing? That maybe he would come out to try to get some goodwill eventually. We'll monitor the situation. Something I was just thinking about separately. Let's move on to just news right out during the show, actually. And I want to get your take on it from the Jets. Rex Ryan is interviewing for head coaching job back in New York tomorrow. He says he's confident he's getting the job, Rex Ryan. He also says that it will be no more of a country club for Aaron Rodgers if he comes back. Who knows what happens there? Do you think that the Jets should hire Rex Ryan, or what's your take on the idea of Rex Ryan, the Redux, back in New York?
I actually really like. I'm someone that's in favor of the move, honestly, because Rex Ryan, he knows how to operate in that New York environment, right? It's tough. It's a tough nose city. I know it living there, right? It's something that you got to be prepared for. And I mean, the Jets have had the most success in the past, 25, 30 years under Rex Ryan. Back-to-back AFC championships with Mark Sanchez. So I think, with the parameters that are set in place, with everything that's going on with the New York Jets, I think for him wanting to step into that implosion and say, you know what, I'm going to be the guy that turns this around. It's not going to be a country club anymore for you, Aaron Rodgers, and he's going to get things in place. I think Rex Ryan is actually a really good pick for the job. Especially if Vrabel and with Belichick being now back in college, these guys are getting taken off the board. And I feel as if, if you want to bring in someone that had success with your franchise, why not go back to where he started?
I actually hadn't really thought about the Jets head coaching opportunity. It wasn't really on tap with Rex Ryan and the confidence he has that he's going to get the job. But also, in thinking about it, I think he would be a good fit back in New York because he does know that environment. He did have the most success as the Jets head coach that any head coach in New York has had with the Jets. And ultimately, that's a division where you're going to play 2 times a season against Josh Allen. You're going to have 2 games a season against Drake May, who looks like he could be a real guy. So you're going to want to have a defensive mind that knows how to compete against those organizations. So I actually like the fit of Rex Ryan returning. And one thing we know about Rex Ryan is he's brash. He knows how to set a culture, and he holds players accountable. So for New York, I think it would be a good fit, actually, to bring Rex Ryan back. I
know Rex Ryan is a defensive-minded guy too. So with the Jets having a stout defense the way that they are, I know they tailed off this year, but at the same time, I feel like the pieces that they have on that end would be something that Rex Ryan could step into and take advantage of. I would say with that though, with him being so defensive-minded and him being defensive-oriented as a head coach, it's crucial that they go ahead and find one of these young offensive coordinators that can come in and dial up the offense the way it's needed to be, because in that division you're going up against guys like Josh Allen, who you have to play twice a year. I mean, Miami even the New England Patriots, if they grab Vrabel, that'll be something that you got to look out for as well. So make sure, Rex Ryan, when you go in the door, make sure you go find you a hot shot offensive coordinator, man, so you can get the ball flowing.
Well said. That's right, Rex. I hope you're listening to my guy TB here. Really, that's the best advice I think anyone could give. But so we'll monitor these situations all offseason and see where new faces land as coaches and organizations. Let's talk about the regular season review. Right? We talked all season long, weekly, but now it's over. Now we're headed to the playoffs. let's talk awards. Okay. And this is the morning after football. Thanks to everyone for joining us at TMA. This is TMA 18. So let's start at the top. Who do you have as your MVP of the 2024 NFL season?
Right to it, man. This was a tit for tat, week after week award. And I feel as if, especially mainstream media, right? I think we need to take this award and we can't finalize it in week 13. We can't finalize it in week 14. We can't say week 11, this guy's going to be the MVP, because these things fluctuate throughout the season, right? And I feel like this was a battle up until the end. And I feel like when you look at it from its totality, you got guys that play spectacular seasons, shouting out, Saquon Barkley, Jared Goff, Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, and so on and so forth. But when you look at the two final guys, when you take Josh Allen, for me, the two final guys, Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson, when you really look at it, and I mean, this last week, I know Josh Allen didn't play, so he wasn't able to, he wasn't on many people's radars this week at, with Lamar Jackson going off the way that he did against Cleveland. But it's just hard for me to ignore the season, man, that Lamar Jackson had this year, Rip. I know the Derrick Henry argument and the way that he's able to take pressure off of Lamar in the spectacular. I mean, he's rushed for 1,900 yards, double-digit touchdowns. Derrick Henry was heaven sent for Lamar Jackson and exactly what they needed in the back end. But for him to take his play and go above and beyond what he did in his MVP seasons, I know that Derrick Henry makes he takes a lot of pressure off of Lamar and creates a lot of problems for matchups, right? So it makes things easier for Lamar in the back end, being able to throw the football with a less pressured box and more one-on-one opportunities in the back end for his receivers. But overall, man, I just can't ignore the season that Lamar Jackson had this year, Rip. I just can't do it. And my MVP award will have to go to Lamar Jackson. I mean, I have a race for MVP here that ESPN had posted yesterday. So just comparing the two stats quickly. Josh Allen, 28 touchdowns to 6 interceptions. Lamar Jackson, 41 touchdowns to 4 interceptions. Passing yards, 4,100 for Lamar, 3,700 for Josh Allen. Rushing yards, 531 for Josh Allen, 915 for Lamar Jackson. Rushing touchdowns, 12 for Josh Allen to Lamar's 4. But in total, I just cannot ignore the spectacular season that Lamar Jackson has had. I know Josh Allen has done more with less, but at the same time, the numbers just add up, and the way that Lamar is playing was spectacular this year. So I'm going to have to go with Lamar Jackson.
Okay, that's fair. I get it. I'm going to go Josh Allen, and I'm going to talk about it for a little bit because, it's funny. Sure. I put some time, really, obviously, we've gone all season. At one point, it looked like Saquon was definitely in the running, but I think ultimately it'd be hard to say that the MVP this season was not one of either Josh Allen or Lamar Jackson. And I think they're both more than capable of being the MVP this season. And I think they both would be, worth being named MVP because they both have had electric seasons. And, I was very pro Josh Allen being the MVP. I thought he had it in a runaway for a while. But Lamar, when you do dive into the numbers and you watch the play and then you kind of put it all together in totality and you go, I think Lamar Jackson actually did have a little bit better of a season than Josh Allen numbers wise across the board. He's had a better season than when he won MVP last year, Lamar Jackson. So he could easily be named this would be his third MVP, right? Yeah. And you could say he absolutely deserves it. There's not really a debate. I mean, he'd be very, very worthy of it. So I'm running through the stats. I'm trying to think, and you gave the stats. The stats are so close when you really break it down. I mean, ultimately, the Bills were 13-4, the Ravens 12-5. Lamar has about 300 plus more passing yards, but Josh Allen didn't play last week. So really that's kind of like a push if he plays in week 18. It's Lamar 41 passing touchdowns to 28 for Josh Allen is a big difference. And I thought for a second, I said, wow, that's way more than I remember. But then you go overall touchdowns, you add in Josh Allen's rushing touchdowns where he had 12, and you go, okay, so Lamar had 45 overall touchdowns rushing and passing. Josh Allen had 40. And then, he didn't play that last game because they had already clinched. So it's pretty close. And so I feel like it can go either way. I would not be surprised if Lamar wins again. But I think Josh Allen is going to win based on sort of narratives, right? It's that idea like Lamar has already won. And you know how this goes. You start winning, they start looking for other players because you can't win every year in a sense, just the way people vote. It's psychology. Josh Allen has never won. You said it yourself. He did more with less this year. Lamar had a supporting cast. So I think I'm going Josh Allen, specifically some of those reasons, but it's really close. Like I honestly, I came to the conclusion last night. I was like, it's kind of like 51-49 for me. Like I'd almost be totally okay if they split it. We've seen that in the past where split MVPs, but I won't be surprised if Lamar Jackson wins because he's been incredible. He really has. I mean, the season Lamar has put forward has just been so special. And so has Josh Allen's, but I'm going to take Josh Allen just because he hasn't gotten it before. And also because he did so much this season with less. And I thought he really limited the turnover part of his game that used to be the crucial part that people picked on Josh Allen for. And so he was able to do it with a supporting cast that I don't think was as good as Baltimore. And so we're getting really nitty gritty here. That's why I went Josh Allen, but I was really close to saying no, it'd be Lamar Jackson in my mind, because I think they're both had incredible seasons. And I'll be interested to see who wins. I really don't know who is going to win because Lamar has been special.
Me either.
And but they both deserve the highest praise for their seasons that they put forth.
Yeah, man. And the narrative point is a great point too, right? I mean, we spoke about it around the time when Josh Allen was really heating up. And he had spectacular games against, at the time, the Detroit Lions and the Kansas City Chiefs, who were undefeated, right? Those were two of his best games of the season. Two of the games where we said, it was all on Josh Allen, who made those plays to win those games. But overall, when you look at the narrative, right, at the start of every season, the NFL, ESPN, all of the mass media, they put out who they think is going to be the MVP for the regular season, for the NFL seasons. And Josh Allen, has been favored, year after year after year, because we see the ability and we've seen it year after year. Josh Allen is somebody who is prolific. He's 6'5", 250, a guy that can launch the ball down the field with accuracy. He can run the football. He has the weakness within his game was the turnovers. And like you said, he turned that down this season, and he didn't have as much of a supporting cast. We spoke about the Stephon Diggs before the year, and we said that can Josh Allen be the one to overcome, losing some of his guys, Gabe Davis as well. And he was able to do that, right? And he showed it without turning the football over at a high rate like he did this year. And he had a really good performances against some of the top tier teams in the NFL. So either or, going back and just, talking to your points, man, I wouldn't be mad either way, whoever won this year, because I just felt like they both had spectacular seasons. How much, quickly, Rip, I want to pose this question to you really quickly before we move on. How much do you even take away from Lamar Jackson's season because of Derrick Henry's acquisition? Do you take anything away from Lamar because of Derrick Henry being in Baltimore?
It's a great question, and a question that people will debate and talk about. The way I think about it, I don't really take away anything from Lamar because of Derrick Henry. I think the only time that I consider Derrick Henry's participation in being on the Ravens is when I start to compare it versus Josh Allen and saying, well, Josh Allen didn't have the supporting cast that is as elite per se. And that's that's where I'm getting real nitty gritty on the picking. What's my deciding factor? But I don't take away from Lamar. Look, every situation is unique, and there's lots of good players in lots of places. And look, Buffalo still has some good players around Josh Allen. It's not like they don't have good players. But, obviously Derrick Henry, I think, helped Lamar Jackson. I think Lamar Jackson helped Derrick Henry be better, right? Like, I think it's a both-way thing. It wasn't like Lamar Jackson was so much better because of Derrick Henry. I know that. I certainly know that Lamar Jackson was really good because of Lamar Jackson, but also having Derrick Henry didn't hurt. So I think it's just that's the way my mind thinks about it. I don't take away from Lamar, but maybe when I debate Josh Allen versus Lamar, I go, well, Lamar had a great player in his backfield, not taking away from him, but not Josh Allen didn't necessarily have the same level of player, even though James Cook's a pretty good running back in his own right. So I don't take away from Lamar because of Derrick Henry. I don't kind of do that because you could put anyone back there and Lamar's still rolling.
Right. He won 2 MVPs, right? He won 2 MVPs with Derrick Henry back there. So, no, I definitely understand.
But yeah, maybe Lamar had an even better season a little bit because of Derrick Henry. But anyways, great conversation, and we can do it again. It'll be interesting to see who wins. I really don't know, and I wouldn't be upset whoever wins. It's not like something where I'd be like, oh, this guy didn't win. What happened? There was a mistake, because that's how I feel happens every year in Coach of the Year award. So let's speak of Coach of the Year award. For me, I'll start. I came down to the conclusion. I had 2 coaches, and you can name a number of coaches, because a lot of coaches have had great seasons. But This is an award that I don't like. This award, I haven't ever, because I feel like it's always given to guys that it doesn't make sense to me. Like, I wasn't pro Kevin Stefanski winning last year for the second time in 3 years in Cleveland because it didn't make sense. Like, he won Coach of the Year his first year, then they stunk again. Then they got back to where they were the first year, and he won Coach of the Year award again. It didn't make sense. Like, that doesn't add up in my brain. I thought last year DeMeco Ryans should have been Coach of the Year. He wasn't.
Same.
Anyways, this year I came down to 2 guys, one in each conference. I came down to, obviously, what Dan Campbell did in Detroit has just been incredible. I mean, obviously they came in with a lot of hype, but they won 15 games. 15-2 is incredible. They took on every challenge, and they were just better than them all. They improved their record by 3 wins. And then you go to the AFC, and I look to the AFC West, and I look to the LA Chargers. What Jim Harbaugh did in his first season in LA, getting the team to the playoffs. They moved from 5 wins under Brandon Staley last year to 11 with Jim Harbaugh this year. The culture's changed, that team has changed, and a lot of people thought, man, they don't have the offensive weapons outside of Justin Herbert to really compete. And look at what the Chargers have done, a complete culture change, a team that's going to be not just trouble this year in the playoffs, but moving forward. So it was down to Jim Harbaugh and Dan Campbell. I thought about Sean Payton. I thought about some other guys that have had solid seasons. Nick Sirianni's been good in Philadelphia. There's a number of guys you could talk about. But ultimately, I came down to both Harbaugh and Campbell. And again, I don't actually know which one is right, but I went with Jim Harbaugh, only because they were so bad last year and they were so good comparatively this year. Whereas Dan Campbell was so good last year and just even better this year, that I don't know what to say is the right answer, but I guess I went Jim Harbaugh, but I could absolutely see why Dan Campbell should be the Coach of the Year. What's your take on Coach of the Year?
I like the Harbaugh selection, man. I didn't know you were gonna go that route. But I like the direction that you went, and it's fitting too, because I know you're an LA fan now, right? That's what you started the show with.
It's a new thing right now, but yeah, I'm learning how it feels. One thing I will say, I've always been a huge Jim Harbaugh fan. Before last offseason, I was posting about how I thought he's the best coach for any organization to get. I thought the Chargers made the right move, and so I'm not surprised by that. But yeah, that's my take, just because of how drastic the change was. Whereas like the Lions were already really good, and now they're just even better. But like, they're both kind of coaches of the year. It's hard to really, it's just, I don't even know how you actually decide. But who do you have?
I'm going to agree with you with the Lions pick, man, in terms of Dan Campbell. I think last year, winning 12 games, getting to the NFC Championship game. But now this year, coming back, the expectations being even higher, and they rose their level of play under the adversity that they faced throughout the year, right? Losing a lot of key players throughout the year on the defensive end, and still being able to win football games, right? And end the season 15-2. And last night, I think capped it off for me, like completely capped it off for me. The way that they were able to play in the back end, that's coaching, right? That's not that's directly coaching. And I think Dan Campbell throughout the year, you just saw it through all the ups and all the downs. I mean, they've only had 2 losses, but there were ebbs and flows throughout their seasons. I mean, they won a lot of close ball games, and that's coaching, and he has that gritty mentality, that go for it mentality, and it resembles throughout the city. It resembles through the team, through the front office, through the city. And so I think Dan Campbell for sure deserves Coach of the Year this year, man. You could just see it in Detroit, the way that he turned things around since he's gotten there. I believe that Dan Campbell this year deserves the Coach of the Year award for sure.
I think it's a great point. And then I hear you say it, and I'm like, you're so right. Like I could say Jim Harbaugh or anyone else, but then you go, did anyone do a better job than Dan Campbell? I mean, what do you have to do?
He did a fantastic job this year, man. Fantastic.
Let's be honest. Dan Campbell could be Coach of the Year since he's been in Detroit. The job that Dan Campbell has done in the Detroit organization is just incredible. I mean, you said it earlier. The first time in the Detroit Lions history, they're the #1 overall seed in the playoffs. And it's all a credit to Dan Campbell. And then I think to myself, how could I choose anyone other than the guy that has his team at 15-2 rolling and just been incredible? And this is kind of where Coach of the Year thing, to me, I just don't really like the award, because then you go, well, shouldn't Andy Reid be the Coach of the Year like every year, or at least this year when they're just unbelievable too? And then you go, well, I don't know. It's just one of those things where it's like a narrative every year. But look, I think Dan Campbell probably will win, but I never understand the award. But I wouldn't be surprised. I think Jim Harbaugh's up there too. I'll stick with Jim Harbaugh.
Not to cut you off. I like the Jim Harbaugh selection on. If we're giving honorable mentions, I wrote down Dan Quinn and the things that he did in Washington this year, man. I mean, the way Jaden Daniels played, I know I didn't expect him to play this good this early in his career, but the way that they were able to turn things around down in Washington, I mean, for a franchise that, was down in the dumps for years, bad ownership and with Dan Snyder, and, just coming back and being able to turn things around in year one, the way that he has is got to clap it up for Dan Quinn down there in Washington for sure. So that's my honorable mention if we're giving off honorable mention.
I had Sean Payton in my honorable mention. I actually thought about Dan Quinn as well. So
he was on my radar too. Sean Payton was on my radar too. For him to step in and turn things around in Denver the way that he has.
Well, and the irony is the Broncos did win 8 games last year. So they didn't win too many more games this year. It was what they were able to do with all the dead cap. I mean, they basically pay $85 million to not have Russell Wilson on their team. And then they take a rookie quarterback and they're able to still achieve a playoff berth. So great job by Sean Payton and their building in Denver. Can't imagine with all that extra money what they'll be able to do in year 2 there. Some good work. Let's talk.
Quick. Oh, sorry, not to cut you off, man, but give me your thoughts really quick. Yesterday's performance by Bo Nix. I mean, that was sensational. The way that he was able to wheel and deal that yesterday, man. Just give me your quick thoughts on Bo, man, because he finished the season spectacularly.
Bo was dialed yesterday. I was watching that game intently, especially in that first half. I mean, he didn't have an incompletion until late in the first half. Everything was perfect. Now, I might also say the performance by the Kansas City defense was impressive. I thought Kansas City's entire performance on just a beautiful way to tank a game was great. It felt like they knew exactly how to basically show up on the field, stay out of getting hurt, and let the game run quickly and then lose drastically. So I was impressed because Kansas City knows how to win. They know how to lose. So, right. But yeah, Bo Nix looked really good. I wasn't surprised that Denver got the W, but obviously Bo is incredible. And he's had such a special rookie season. So let's talk about the rookies and let's talk about our offensive and defensive rookies of the year. I'll start defensively. I thought this one was pretty easy. I go out to LA with the Rams. I thought Jared Verse was just such an impactful player for LA, especially on that defense. After losing Aaron Donald, there was a lot of questions on how could the Rams stay competitive, especially defensively, and they've done a wonderful job, and that's been a huge credit to especially having Jared Verse be a super impactful rookie defensively. So Jared Verse is my defensive rookie of the year. How about yourself?
I think, we're going across the board with this one right here unanimously, man. I think he played fantastic football this year. Rookie stepping in, like you said, Aaron Donald, holes in the defense. Where are they going to go defensively? And they look really good defensively, and it's really credited to her. So I think we're in agreement on that one for sure, Rick.
And I think we're going to be in agreements on an offensive rookie of the year. But let's just note, I mean, there were some really impressive rookies. You talked about Bo Nix, right? A heck of a season from a rookie at the quarterback position, but he's not my pick. You look at the tight end position, and I think the best tight end in football is a rookie, Brock Bowers, right? Set records, incredible. But obviously, I think that you're going to agree without knowing your answer, but I think we're both going to say that the rookie of the year offensively was none other than in Washington with Jaden Daniels. I mean, what he did throughout the entire season was awesome. He's already one of the elite quarterbacks in the NFL. And so Jaden Daniels, for me, is obviously my offensive rookie of the year. How about yourself?
Same. The way Jaden took over and, I mean, was leading the NFC East for a little bit of time throughout the season, man, and had me looking like, hold up now, what's going on down there in Washington? Because, right, things were getting interesting the way that he was able to play. But, I mean, it's directly towards, his play this year, the way things have turned around in Washington. I mean, I credited Dan Quinn, but all of that credit, you can't go without saying or mentioning at all Jaden Daniels, man. You got to speak on Jaden Daniels and the performance that he was able to display in year one, being able to take over the way that he was. But I will say this, he ended the season strong. And if he didn't, Bo Nix was right there to potentially swoop that trophy right from under him, the way that he was able to play to close out the year. So spectacular play, franchise quarterbacks that we have here in Washington and in Denver. But definitely, I in agreement with you that Jaden Daniels is the offensive rookie of the year for sure.
And I love your point right there. You're right, because it was like weeks 1 through 10, Jaden in a landslide, right? The award's not even, we already sealed the envelope, the award's given.
Definitely.
And then there's a period there after week 10 for about a month where you go, wait, I don't think this, I even said, I thought the award was back open. And you're like, maybe it's actually not going to be Jaden anymore. But the way that Jaden finished the season the last month, carried the team, was back, like it felt like maybe there was an injury there that Jaden had that was affecting him in the middle there. But yeah, the way that he put the team on his back, especially late in the year, it's definitely Jaden. He closed strong. But yeah, credit to some of the great rookies that we saw this year from that won't win the award offensively. Now let's finish up with our players of the year, offensively and defensively. I'll let you start either offense or defense. Tell me who you got as player of your year.
Offensive player of the year, got to take it down to Philadelphia. Shout out Saquon Barkley, man. 2,005 yards this year, 245 rushing attempts, 13 touchdowns, 248 receiving yards, and 2 touchdowns totaling. I mean, if he would have played that game in week 18, I think we all would have known his name would have been cemented in history as the all-time leading rusher in NFL history. But we prioritize health over wealth per se. But this award has Saquon's name engraved in it. This is his to take home. Shout out to him, the way that he was able to come through from New York, take his game from here and just take it through the roof, man. But credited to our offensive line as well, the way that they were able to block for him this year. But Saquon's just spectacular, taking it down to when he hurdles guys backwards, spinning off of guys, juking guys, the way that he's able to make such a small crease, go through it and be able to take a 20-yard, what's supposed to be maybe a 5-yard gain, take it 20, 30, 40 yards to the house. Saquon Barkley is my offensive player of the year for sure. Shout out to Saquon Barkley, man. We wouldn't have had the season that we had this year without Saquon. We might have been down in the dumps similar to how we were last year, but Saquon has been a symbol of hope, and it's somebody that, I can't speak more highly about what Saquon has brought down to Philadelphia. So shout out Saquon Barkley, 2-6, man. Love you, my guy, for sure. Defensive player of the year, TJ Watt, man. TJ Watt down there in Pittsburgh. I got to give the award to TJ Watt down in Pittsburgh, man. The way that the Watt brothers, something, whatever juice they got, man, whatever water they drinking, I need some of that too, and I got to bring it down to where over here in New York and produce some dogs like they've got in their household. Because TJ Watt, JJ Watt, it doesn't matter if your last name is Watt, you are a dog. Shout out to TJ Watt this year, man. 11.5 sacks, 6 forced fumbles, 2 recovers, 61 total tackles. Defensive ranks, rushing defense, 7th overall, 11th overall defense. I mean, TJ Watt, when he's not on the field, it shows and it speaks highly, and they're not as prolific on the defensive side of the football without TJ Watt. I think you take him out of there. If Myles Garrett, I give an honorable mention to Myles and Pat Surtain. If Myles Garrett wasn't on a team that was just so bad this year, the award potentially could have had his name on it too. And Pat Surtain had a great year in and of itself, man. Tied his career high with 4 interceptions, gave up around a 59% completion percentage, 55.6 opposing quarterback rating. So you throw it his way and it's Surtain Island. But at the end of the day, TJ Watt wins the award. Pat Surtain for me was second in that running, and Myles Garrett, if he wasn't on the Cleveland Browns, potentially could have won the award himself. So offensive player of the year, Saquon Barkley. Defensive player of the year, TJ Watt.
Yeah, and I can keep this pretty quick. Obviously, we start offensive player of the year. I like your choice with Saquon 2K. Obviously, Saquon Barkley, an incredible season. But when you think about it, the competition for offensive player of the year is strong this year. Jamar Chase wins the Triple Crown for receivers, which is a unique stat. So, I mean, Jamar Chase is just an incredible season. But what Saquon did over the 2,000, rushing yards and just the highlight plays all season long, he's not going to have his name etched as the top, single season rushing leader in history because he didn't play in week 18, but his name is etched in history this year, specifically with the way that he performed in Philadelphia. Always been a huge Saquon Barkley fan, super happy to watch him thrive in the new uniform in Philadelphia, and so excited that we get to see him in playoff matchups. And you just love when you see all-time talents like a guy like Saquon not being wasted in an organization that's not really playing for anything. So Saquon Barkley, my offensive player of the year as well. Defensively, I'm going to go off the board here. It was some of the names you talked about. I mean, TJ Watt, always impactful, just incredible. Myles Garrett, obviously, another great season, reigning defensive player of the year. But I'm going to go to Cincinnati and take Trey Hendrickson. 17 and a half sacks, just a difference maker all season, even though that Bengals defense made no difference. So it's a little bit like, well, do we give it to the guy on the teams whose defense was terrible, who just fired the defensive coordinator? It's a tough one. I don't have the right answer, but I'm going to take Trey Hendrickson. I thought he was really, really good. Every time I watched, he was the one player on that Bengals defense that was unstoppable. But yeah, Patrick Surtain, incredible. One of probably my favorite cornerback in the league, and a shutdown guy, definitely worth the consideration. And obviously the pass rushers, TJ and Miles were great this year as well. I'll go Trey Hendrickson. We'll see how those play out. Those are our awards for the season.
No, Trey Hendrickson, man, that I apologize for not mentioning your name, Trey Hendrickson. The way that he played on Saturday night and throughout the year. I mean, Joe Burrow said it himself that Trey is the defensive player of the year this year for sure. And he's somebody that I should have mentioned. So I apologize, Trey, but shout out to you, man. You had a great season this year for sure. And like you said, Jamar Chase is also another good pick. If they won at least maybe 2-3 more games, made the playoffs, we could be potentially seeing 3 awards taken by Cincinnati with the MVP trophy, the Offensive Player of the Year, and the Defensive Player of the Year. If things went a little bit differently for Cincinnati, they could have had an amazing season the way that they played individually this year.
Yeah, Cincinnati. I mean, the sadness for fans, if you like football, is that Cincinnati, obviously, they have a continued season after season, kind of tradition now of starting slow, and it caught up to them this year. They weren't able to make it back and get there. But the way they played in the second half of the season, very dangerous. I mean, Joe Burrow easily could have been MVP the way he's playing this season had they had a better record and more wins and would make the playoffs. So good awards. Also, just on a note, Trey Hendrickson, 17 and a half sacks this year. He had 17 and a half sacks last year. I think he's the most unheralded guy because he's in Cincinnati. Not enough people know about how good this player is defensively. We'll see these awards, all worthy winners. I'm sure we're going to have nailed most of these. Let's quickly touch on the playoffs. Now that we are here, we're here for the 2025 playoffs. This is the most exciting time, especially for you probably, because you have a team that is not only in the playoffs, but they have a real shot at this year. I'm excited for all the matchups. Let's start with our wild card weekend. And we have Chargers, Texans, Ravens, Steelers, Bills, Broncos. In the NFC, we have Eagles, Packers, Commanders, Bucks, and Vikings, Rams. So why don't we start with, do you have a best wild card game weekend that you're thinking of? Like, have you looked at the schedule and said, this is the game that I'm most excited for, the best one?
Yeah, I got Vikings at Rams. I mean, when you go from a matchup last night where it's potentially we're going after the 1 seed, a bye, and then having home field advantage through the playoffs, now we drop to the 5 seed and we're on the road going to the Rams and in a meeting that we lost in week 7. I mean, I think this one right here I don't even know if I'd say it's even an upset, man. And I have the home team in that matchup too. I think I like the home team in that matchup. That's one of my underdogs for the week. Having the Rams, taking out the Vikings in wild card weekend, man. It's their 8th meeting in postseason history and a rematch, like I said, from week 7 when the Rams took over and won that game. I think Matthew Stafford, being a veteran, being somebody, that has had postseason success, and on the verge of potentially going back to Detroit where, he made his name, his household name, and, ultimately, has a chance to take out Detroit as well. I think I like the Rams in that matchup, but that's my favorite, one of my highlighted matchups of the week, just because of where the Vikings were last night and now where they're having to go on the road to Los Angeles and take on the Rams. I think that's a big time matchup for sure.
Yeah, it is a big time matchup. I had 2 games for my best game. I couldn't decide which, and Vikings Rams was one of them. So we're on the same page there. Great game, great breakdown that you gave. it's a big change from the Vikings, who could have had a bye week. Instead, now they're on the road in Los Angeles against the Rams. The other best game, if it wasn't Vikings-Rams, as you said, for me, is actually your team. It's a rematch of the opening game of the regular season this year, which was in Brazil. It's a Packers-Eagles rematch. I love the idea of you get the Packers, the Eagles back on the field, this time in Philadelphia. I think that's the other game for me that I'm most excited for to watch as far as these matchups are concerned. Let's talk about who we like in each game. Let's go right to Packers Eagles. It's your team. I'll give you the floor. I'm assuming I know who you like, but talk to us about the Packers Eagles matchup.
Definitely, like you said, rematch from week 1 in Brazil. The Eagles have won 7 straight home games, dating back to week 6, rolling. But my concern going into the game for Philadelphia, I mean, Jalen Hurts, we haven't seen him since week 16, since he was taken out from that concussion. And I checked this morning, they said he's still progressing through protocol. So I'm not necessarily sure. Does that mean he's not going to practice for the first half of the week? If that's the case, we know Hurts is a rhythm quarterback. He's somebody that is based off of rhythm and consistency. And for him to not having these last couple of weeks to be able to play, to be able to get the rhythm back, to throw him out there, coming off concussion protocol and throwing him in the fire of a playoff matchup. I mean, I would have liked him, to be out of concussion protocol by now. But I think because of the way we match up against Green Bay, Green Bay having some injuries of their own, Christian Watson, was carted off yesterday. And Jordan Love, I know he messed up his elbow yesterday as well. I think he'll be good to go for Sunday. But I think the way that we match up against them earlier in the season, we were going through the ups and downs of the defense, the offense, what's our identity. But now I think things are rolling in Philly, despite, Hurts not being, on the field these last couple of weeks. I think we'll be able to plug him in, play him. And I think we just match up very well the way that we offensively, defensively, special teams. And I think we'll take out the Green Bay Packers in Wild Card Weekend at home.
Yeah. Great breakdown. Not much more to add. I would have liked this matchup a little bit more if Christian Watson was not injured. I think that's a big loss for the Green Bay offense. Huge. I think Jordan Love will be fine. But the idea that Watson, it seems like I'd be shocked if he played. It looked like that injury was more.
Yeah, that was bad. It looked pretty bad. Yeah.
Yeah. And I do think that Watson, who has been injured throughout his career, is very impactful and he needs to be on the field. And without him, I don't like that Packers offense nearly as much as I did with him. I'm going to take the Eagles. Philadelphia, tough place to play. They've had an incredible season. It's been great. I think they're going to be ready for this game, and it will be something to watch with what happens with Jalen Hurts. Hopefully the concussion, he is fully over it, he can play, because Philadelphia is, as good as the season is, and as much as we know how the playoffs work, you gotta perform in the playoffs. I mean, how devastating if Green Bay goes into Philadelphia and beats Philadelphia, this whole season is going to be a disappointment. Who knows what will happen? The conversation is going to completely flip from being up here to being down there.
Yeah.
So, but I do like Philadelphia in the matchup over Green Bay to take it. Let's move it through the rest of the matchups in the NFC. Let's start. And these are rematches as well in week 1. Commanders and Bucks played. Who do you have in the matchup between Washington and Tampa?
See, this one is a tough one because of the success that Jaden Daniels and the Commanders and Dan Quinn have had this year. But going into Tampa Bay, watching that over the last few years for Philadelphia myself. So we played them last year and we played them in Hurts' first year starting, right? And we lost both times. And the way that they play in the postseason at home, Tampa Bay, I mean, and the way the offense is flowing, the way that defensively Todd Bowles gets after you, and especially rookie quarterbacks. I mean, even though Jaden Daniels is somebody that hasn't been rattled this year, we haven't seen him rattled. He's gone through his injuries, bounced back, and still been able to play great football. But I think ultimately it's a tough place to play in Tampa Bay for your first career playoff start. And I think it's a tough one, man. I was going back and forth with this one right here. But Washington, seeking its first playoff win since 2005. I don't know if it'll come this next week. So I'm going to go with Tampa Bay. I'm going to go with the home team on this one. This was a tough one for me, though, because of the success that Jaden has had this year. And I like him, man, as a player. So it was tough to call, but I like Tampa Bay at home in this one.
Yeah, this is a tough one, right? Washington with Jaden in Tampa, but we've seen Tampa in the playoffs at home last year with Baker. They got it done over Philadelphia, and now we look to this matchup, and I've been going back and forth as well on this because there has been moments where I thought Tampa was not so good, and then moments where I was like, they're really good, and I just don't know which Tampa team we'll see. But
Right.
I think the playoff experience that they've had, not just last year, but over a number of years, their fans, I'm going to ride with you and take the Bucks to beat Washington. But it wouldn't surprise me if Jaden pulls off some magic in his first playoff game in Tampa. So I'll ride with you there.
Wouldn't surprise me either, man. But at the same
Yeah.
time, like you said, man, the home field advantage, the way that they've got their playoff experience, and the way the defense is dialed up in that postseason, man, I've seen it too many times to go against it. So I'm gonna roll with Tampa Bay, similar to you, man, for sure.
And then last game, which you already touched on, you've got the Rams beating the Vikings. I'm gonna take Minnesota here only because I think the Rams have a little bit more injuries. I mean, they sat everyone because in a game that they kind of wanted to win, and they did win, but they lost. But they kind of gave up playoff positioning. That's how much they needed rest for some of their guys. I think it's gonna be a heck of a game. I'm gonna take Minnesota. I don't feel great about it, but I think that they've had such an epic season. And while they weren't good on Sunday Night Football, I'm not going to let that overweigh what I think about what they can do in LA on next Monday night. So I'll take the Vikings here. I know you like the Rams. Should be a hell of a game, though.
I think the reason why, right, and I don't want to give recency bias either because this year was a spectacular year for the Vikings, but for Sam Darnold's first career playoff start to be on the road against a team like Los Angeles, I mean, like you said, they sat a lot of players this week because they needed to. They've been dealing with a lot of injuries as the year has closed out. But Matthew Stafford in this situation versus Sam Darnold, Super Bowl champion versus somebody that's stepping into this light for the first time. I understand the team surrounded by him. I understand that they've been going through injuries, but I just like in these situations when you look at it in its totality, balls in your hand with 2 minutes left on the clock, and I got Matthew Stafford or I got Sam Darnold. I'm taking Matthew Stafford in that situation. So at the end of the day, I like the fact that week 7, what I saw, I had to go back and rewatch the game. The things that I saw from that matchup, I like the matchups on the outside, Cooper Nakua, Cooper Kupp, and those guys. I like Kyron Williams and the things that he's able to do. And I know Minnesota's defensive style. Brian Flores has called a great defense this year, and they've been playing ball. Shout out to Byron Murphy too, first Pro Bowl of his career this year. But at the same time, man, it's tough though, man. But it's a close call. But for me, I got the Rams in this situation.
Yeah. And week 7, Rams 30, Vikings 20. Matt Stafford had 4 touchdown passes, and so yeah, I could see it. I think we have some good matchups that could go either way. Actually, in the wild card weekend,
Yeah.
It's an interesting year in the playoffs. Let's move to the AFC quickly. Let's start in Texas. The Chargers visit Houston and my new team. So are you going against my new team, or are you go? No, who do you got? Chargers Texans. Interesting matchup.
I like the Chargers in this situation, man. Number 1 scoring defense, and I mean they've allowed a league low 29 total touchdowns. Houston, offensively ranks 19th and been struggling as of late. I know they won yesterday, but that's nothing to take home heading into the playoffs. I mean, CJ since 2003 has been sacked 90 times. The pressure's going to be dialed up. Jim's going to throw that pressure in his face. And I mean, CJ has the last 2 starts that he's made, it hasn't looked good for him. And it just looks like, with all of the injuries that they're facing on offense, and some of the defense, I just think that the Chargers, as of right now, are playing better football going into the postseason. Jim Harbaugh will have them dialed up. Justin Herbert is playing some of his best football. I think they'll win in Houston.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think the Chargers take that in Houston because Houston, which came into this season as one of the favorites for the Super Bowl after an incredible first year with CJ, has really regressed this season. I mean, the injuries have caught up to them, not just Diggs, but Dell, and they're just not playing as well. CJ has not played that well this season. They do have that home field, but I think it's going to be too much with Harbaugh on the sidelines, Herbert, and the way the Chargers play defense. I like the Chargers as well to get the W in Houston. Let's go to the other intra-division matchup that we'll see for the 3rd time this season. We've seen this matchup for years in the AFC North. Baltimore, Pittsburgh. I'm obviously going to ride with Baltimore. I think they could blow them out, even though it is a division type of matchup. I just haven't liked what we've seen from the Pittsburgh offense now for over a month. They look like they look like a worse version of the Vikings offense yesterday, where they just don't have any plays they could do. George Pickens forgot how to catch the ball. Nothing's going on. So I'll take Baltimore, Lamar Jackson in a runaway over Pittsburgh. How about yourself?
Yeah, quickly, we're in agreement on this one as well. I mean, entering the playoffs, the Steelers are on a 4-game losing streak, and I mean a 5-game playoff losing streak. The last win was 2016 seen for Pittsburgh. So I just think the momentum carrying into the playoffs, they don't really have much. And with Baltimore, clicking on all cylinders and Lamar playing some of his best ball, Derrick Henry as well, the defense also has gotten things together over the last few weeks. I just think there's no camaraderie right now offensively on the Steelers side. Like you said, George Pickens and Russ, what's the connection there? What's going on that side? I just really don't know. And so, yeah, I'm rolling with Baltimore on this one pretty easily. And for all of the matchups that we've seen between the Steelers and the Ravens, it's crazy that this is the first time via ESPN that they'll be facing in the postseason. So I'm looking forward to seeing it, or the first time the Baltimore will host Pittsburgh in the postseason. So looking forward to that. Looking forward to the matchup though overall, but I think they'll run away with this pretty easily. It's kind of similar, not as much as their last matchup, but I think they'll handle things pretty easily. Double-digit score for sure, I believe.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. An interesting fact that you had about the first time Baltimore will be the home team in the playoffs against Pittsburgh. Okay, and then finally, let's round out the AFC playoff picture in Week 1, Wild Card Weekend, with a game. Denver traveling to Buffalo. Pretty easy for me. Buffalo is rested. They're ready. They're a very tough place to play. Those fans will be ready to get after it. Breaking tables, all the stuff that happens in Buffalo. And I'll take Josh Allen. I'll take the experience. I'm taking the Bills. I think that Denver's had a nice season, but I do think this is where it ends in Buffalo.
For sure. Piggybacking off of your last sentiment, man. Denver has had a great season. First playoff appearance since they won Super Bowl 50. Back with Peyton Manning. Ends the 8-year playoff drought for them. But I think it ends this weekend. I think, like you said, Buffalo's rested. Josh Allen, he's played his wild card weekend statistics are through the roof. Like Josh Allen comes out ready to ball when it's wild card playoff time. So I'm gonna roll with Buffalo. Like you said, tough place to play, undefeated there this season. And so yeah, I got Buffalo in this matchup.
Yeah, so we're in agreement on all the wild card weekend matchups except for Minnesota, LA, Rams. We'll see how that plays out. Let's quickly, as we wrap up, another wonderful The Morning After Football, number 18 on what do you see team-wise coming out of each conference? I'll go quickly. I'm going chalk. I've been trying to think about it, but I'm taking Detroit in the NFC because I think their path is perfectly set up for them. I mean, they're going to have the bye week and then they have to win 2 games. They're going to get, in my opinion, a very winnable first game after being rested, depending on who they end up playing, whether it's Packers, Commanders, or Rams. I like that no matter what. And then, I think the deciding factors are going to get Philadelphia at home if that is the game, which I think it will be Detroit, Philadelphia. But I just like Detroit at home, that environment, everything they've learned. It does feel like this is Detroit's year. So I'll take Detroit coming out of the NFC. And then when we go to the AFC, I didn't think I was going to do this, honestly, but I don't know how I could go against Kansas City, especially with their path, right? They're going to either have the Texans or the Chargers, basically, because I don't think the Broncos are winning in their first matchup. And then they get a home game against either Buffalo or Baltimore. Should be a good matchup, but I can't go against Kansas City at home in a conference championship game, no matter who's on the other sideline, until I see that other team beat them. And so to me, it's like, as much as I would like to say Baltimore is going to do it, but I can't see them winning in Kansas City until I actually see it. I can't see Josh Allen doing it in the playoffs until I see it. So I just can't go against Kansas City. So I'm going Kansas City and Detroit. I know the number 1 seed is not something I would normally do, but when I really looked at it, I can't really go any other place. I've got Kansas City and Detroit in the Super Bowl. How about yourself?
Yeah, I started the year off, man, and I said this is going to be the year that I'm going to stop going against Kansas City. I'm going to stop going against Kansas City and Patrick Mahomes because I saw it with my own 2 eyes, back-to-back years, them winning the Super Bowl. So I can't go against them. I've seen it in different fashions. Late game, Patrick Mahomes pulls something out of his hat and ends up winning the biggest game. And so ultimately, like you said, got Buccaneers, Eagles. I'll have Eagles advancing, Rams, Lions. I've got the Lions advancing. So in the NFC Championship game, I would say this after this weekend, I'll be a little more confident because, like you said, Rip, I'm a realist, right? I'm not just gonna say Philadelphia just because I'm an Eagles fan, right? You got to take it. You got to look at what you're getting from both teams, right? And at this point in time, I'm seeing the Lions flying high, right? I'm seeing that offense being prolific. I'm seeing the defense, even with them guys that are injured and have been injured throughout the years. They're just plug and play, next man up mentality, like I mentioned at the top of the show. But with Philadelphia after this weekend, I want to see how Jalen Hurts looks post this injury. like you said, he's a rhythm guy. He's somebody that needs to work off consistency. And I know we've been dominant in the run game this year, but I need to see it. So this weekend is going to be big for me, and especially next weekend if we do end up playing the Buccaneers. But I've got the Eagles and the Lions in the championship game. I've got the Ravens and the Chiefs. I think the Ravens will win this weekend. Of course, like I said, they'll beat Pittsburgh, and then they'll go to Buffalo. And I think the way that they've been playing ball this year, I've got the Ravens in that matchup, man. It'll be a tough one. It'll be a tit for tat back and forth. But I in that situation, I'm gonna roll with Lamar Jackson, and so I've got the Ravens at the Chiefs. I got the Eagles at the Lions, and I'll take the Chiefs, and we'll get a rematch.
Look.
A rematch of Super Bowl 57, man, and I've got the Eagles and the Chiefs in the Super Bowl.
Good. Look, I get it. You're a Philadelphia, you're a Philly guy, Eagles guy. I understand how it'd be impossible to go against.
I can't come on this show and not pick the Eagles, man. I can't do it. I can't do it.
No. I respect it. I completely respect it. It's like it's too hard, even if you don't, you can't do it. And I respect it, because the truth is, great matchups. First off, a Ravens, a round 2 matchup. If we get Buffalo and Baltimore, that's awesome. And then if we can get, those conference championship games should be epic. Whoever wins that Ravens Buffalo in Kansas City, great storyline, great match.
Can go either way.
Yeah, Detroit, Philadelphia. If the Eagles beat the Lions, it's not like I would be stunned. They're going to be right there with a shot. So great conference championship matchups are on the horizon unless something wild happens. So that should be really fun. But let's say they end up the way we both think. I've got Chiefs and Lions, and I went against the Chiefs in my preseason preview. I thought things would unravel somehow, an injury, this, and that, but it didn't. They look like they're ready to win again, a three-peat. We've never seen it before, and I can't go against the Chiefs in the Super Bowl, even if I think, this is the storybook Lions year, this is the Eagles, whatever. I'm just not going to do it until it happens. So I think the Chiefs are going to three-peat. It's status quo, not what everyone wants to hear, but that's my thought here, is that Kansas City set up. They had an epic season, and they're playing better now. And I'm just not going to be the guy that goes against Mahomes in a Super Bowl where they're going to go for a three-peat. So I'll take the Chiefs to beat the Lions in the Super Bowl this year in New Orleans. You've got a Chiefs-Eagles Super Bowl, and I'm assuming you'll take your boys to get it done this time in the Super Bowl, when they were close but came up short last time.
38-35, I believe the score was, man. And
one of the great Super Bowls, by the way.
It was great.
Such a great.
Yes,
yep.
Both quarterbacks. I mean, that was the best game I've seen Jalen Hurts play in the biggest moment, and it was a tough play. In the second quarter when he did fumble and they returned it for a touchdown, but overall, tit for tat, both players played fantastic, and that was a great Super Bowl, man, top to bottom for sure. I've got a rematch, like I said, a Super Bowl 57. My head says and agrees with you with the three-peat, man. My head agrees with you because of the way that they're playing at the most important time of the year. We saw Kansas City. They just do this every year. I don't know how they do it. The switch flips, and when they reach the postseason, it's like all gas, no brakes, and they're after it full speed ahead, and everything is clicking on all cylinders. Patrick Mahomes ups his play. Travis Kelce, Andy Reid, play call, everything ups their play. They've been in these situations before, and they know how to handle them at an elite level. So I've got – my head says they three-peat. My heart can't go there, though, Rip. My heart can't go there. I got Philadelphia getting back in a rematch and ultimately winning the Super Bowl this year. Got us, winning that game. I can't go against this, Rip. I'm sorry, man. I'm sorry. I can't do it. But at the end of the day, man, it's not like there's a clear-cut winner in any of these situations that we're speaking on, right? The ball can roll in either direction. And so that's what's so exciting about the playoffs starting this weekend, is that we don't know what's going to happen. We can predict as much as we want to, but at the end of the day, the players got to go out on the field and get the job done. And so that's what makes playoff football so exciting.
It does. And I think what you just described ultimately is what makes fans of the NFL keep coming back, fans of the team, because that ball can do crazy things. And it's, how the playoffs are. The unexpected can happen with a fumble, an interception, a timely miss. Who knows? There's always some unique things that make it really impossible to predict, because like you said, these are very close matchups that it just depends the way the ball is going to bounce. Who knows how weather plays into it? We'll see. But ultimately, I think in your breakdown of the Chiefs-Eagles Super Bowl, I would ride with the Chiefs specifically at the head coaching advantage. And I think that what the Chiefs do is they don't beat themselves ever. I'd be a little concerned with what could happen with the Eagles and Sirianni. Maybe the coaching advantage would be there. But hey, would be epic no matter what, who gets there. We'll talk more about this as we get there. We've got about a month to the Super Bowl at this point, and an exciting playoffs on tap.
Yes, sir, man. It's great to start my mornings off and my Mondays off specifically talking ball with you, Rip. Missed it these last couple of weeks, but I saw you traveling, and it's been a holiday season. It's the start of the new year, so what a more perfect time to kick back off the start of the fresh week with TMA, man. Exciting stuff. Playoff football is back, man. We're here, and 2025 can't start off any better, man. Let's do it, Rip. I'm excited to continue talking ball as these playoffs go on.
100%. It's an amazing episode. We broke down so much. Tell everyone, anyone watching, listening, where they can follow you and what you're working on.
Yes, sir. So you can follow me at Pro Football Post on Twitter, and you can also follow me at BTB Sports on Instagram, where I'll post a lot of our stuff from the show on there. This week, definitely with it being the playoff preview, got to jump on it. Got to get some clips out. Got to make sure we're seeing what guys think of our picks, what everyone thinks of everything that's circulating around the playoffs and the conversations, the MVP, the coaching carousel. It's a lot of things going on, man, and a lot of stuff to talk about. So posting about it all this week. It'll be an exciting time, Saturday, Sunday, and even Monday. So can't wait to get back next week, man, and talk more ball with you, Rip.
Dude, what an epic start to 2025. Great to see you, my friend, and we will talk again throughout the playoffs. Thanks for joining, and make sure you guys are following TB, the best. So much great feedback on what this man is putting out. Make sure you're following him. BTB Sports, Pro Football Post.
Yes, sir.
Have a good one, boss.
Yes, sir. You too.
So there you go. It's another week down, the final regular season, the morning after football. Number 18 here. An awesome 2024 NFL regular season. The playoffs should be just as exciting. This is when the games get more important. The games get fun. I hope you guys enjoyed today's program, and I hope that you're making sure to follow not just myself, subscribe on YouTube. You can turn on notifications on X. We'll keep you locked in, get out some of the information that we share today's program, and always appreciate the support. We'll see you next time for the morning after football. Mondays are better when you're locked in. We're locked in here. We'll see you next time. Thanks for tuning in, guys.